Hey, this is Troy Taylor with the Championship Football Coaches Clinic podcast, sponsored by Reps VR, First Down Playbook, Rat Coach, The Top Hopper, Sideline Design Sports Workbook, and Tip of the Spear. Today we have Coach Bill George, former head coach of the Coast Guard Academy. Coach George, how are you doing today? And I've got my buddy that coaches at Benedictine said that you were the guy that gave him his first job. Do you know who I'm talking about, Coach?
Give me a name.
Okay, right on, Coach. I ain't got my phone on me. I'll look it up, Coach. You retweeted, but Coach, you wrote a book, Coach. Tell me a little bit about the book and a little bit about you, Coach, because we've never met, we've never talked before. We're just two coaches talking.
Okay, and I'll tell you, I am very proud of the book. But the book is Home Fields, and the subtitle is Coast Guard Academy Football Coach Recounts the Unfulfilled Lives of World War II.
Wow.
And it is about caregiving. It is about coaching college football. And it is about unfulfilled lives of World War II. And we can go into greater detail, but I'll give you a quick summary. I took one football game, the 2014 Coast Guard Academy versus Merchant Marine college football game. My father is 87. He's on the couch dying in hospice care in our home. My wife and I became parents very late in life. We adopted in our 50s our first and only child. And so my father moved in with us. My daughter is his companion, his brother, she thinks of him as at that time. And then he clears up as he's dying, and he clears up on his meds a little bit. And he starts talking about this little tiny immigrant village off of Cayuga Lake in Ithaca, New York, or outside of Ithaca, New York, Myers, New York. And these people he grew up with and how they grew up in this simple immigrant village. And then all of a sudden, they are thrust onto the world stage of World War II. And we go back and forth a little bit about what it's like to take care of a dying guy, and a little bit about and I try to reflect on things at the Coast Guard Academy as we lead into this arch rivalry game, him dying on the couch. I'm trying to get him to this one last game. And we're playing our arch rival who we haven't beaten in 4 years. And of course, every night, comes the conversation about dying and heaven, but then we relive the lives of World War II as they grew up and went off to war.
The greatest generation, my friend Kurt Von Bargen, Coach.
Oh, Kurt, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. He retweeted it, Coach. Said you gave him his first job.
The great thing about coaching at the Coast Guard Academy, it isn't the Division I, it was Division III, and they gave me some young intern positions because we couldn't have grad assistants there. And these guys would come out of college. Kurt came right out of East Carolina, and they would come up, and you had to give them a job. You're not the GA. You're not going for coffee. You're coaching the receivers or the defensive line or the D-backs, and you're going to have a recruiting area and everything. And so you can't. You're a coach. We don't have 10 million people here. You're coaching, and so I had a lot of great young people come along and work with me, and it was just an honor to be around young guys who are cracking into coaching.
Yeah, Coach. I got MK. She's a young lady. She's a middle school student. She watches all of our podcasts. She's a Steelers fan, and she'll be commenting. She might ask you a few questions, but she's an awesome young lady, and she loves sports. But Coach, tell me a little bit about
MK.
Yeah,
MK,
go ahead.
I'm 65 years old. My daughter just turned 14. She's in the 8th grade middle school, and she's on the middle school basketball team. And one great thing I can do, MK, is I can take her down to the academy and still go into the gym and shoot baskets, which we did today. And so, MK, I'm lucky. I know where you are, MK. And we're going to watch Rudy tonight, MK. Lila and I are going to watch Rudy. My daughter and I are going to watch Rudy tonight.
That's a great movie. I cry every time I watch it. I saw it in the movie theater, Coach. So where are you from, Coach? Where did you grow up? Tell me a little bit about your upbringing and your folks.
I grew up in Glens Falls, New York, a little tiny town about, maybe an hour north of Albany, 20,000 people. And my dream was like everybody else. I wanted to go play for Syracuse University. I wanted to play Division I football.
Yes.
You know what I mean? My dream all started when my dad dragged me out to Cornell, about 3 hours away, and we watched Ed Marinero run for the Heisman Trophy. And
Wow.
so right then and there in the 8th grade, I said, I'm going to play college football.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I remember the Syracuse recruiters and scouts came to the high school, and everybody got me out of class. And when I got down to the coach's office, they had 16 millimeter film. My
Mm-hmm.
coach was rewinding the film. I said, "Where's the Syracuse coach?" He said he left. He said, he said, I said, "What did he say?" He said, "You're going to do real well at Ithaca," because Ithaca College was Division III, and they were recruiting me too.
Yes.
And so that was it. Jim Butterfield recruited me to Ithaca College. I went there. I played 4 years. I was lucky enough. My senior year, we won the national championship in
Wow. Go ahead, Coach.
Yep. And won the national championship. And I wrote a book, and my love of the book came really my freshman year. I had this unbelievable freshman writing teacher, Mary Ann Rochelle. And
wow.
she drew, I was a person who couldn't talk or express myself, and I didn't have any confidence in myself academically. And she drew it out of me.
Talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about not having confidence, Coach, because I felt the same way when I was growing up. I wasn't as smart as other people. But now I've told my students, you're just as smart as everybody. I mean, talk a little bit about that.
So I mean, literally, it was my first class, 8 o'clock in the morning. And I remember walking by 2 or 3 times thinking, am I going in this class or am I going home? I mean, I was a C student in high school, and I worked hard, but I didn't get any A's and that stuff. And, we had short stories, and she gave me a great deal of confidence. She allowed us to write short stories. And she gave me a great deal of confidence in writing, and which in turn gave me confidence in my other classes. Being a freshman, taking a liberal arts history class, or in biology or kinesiology as a freshman phys ed major at Ithaca College. And so she drew some stuff out of me, and she told me, you should take a minor in writing. And I didn't, but she drew a great love for writing me. And at Ithaca College, it was a great thing. I had this wonderful writing teacher at 8 o'clock in the morning. And at 4 o'clock, I had this tremendous football coach, Jim Butterfield, who preached family, class. And I'm going to tell you something. The only person growing up I ever saw cry was my dad. Wow. He was an emotional guy. Jim Butterfield would talk to the team, and his eyes would get a little watery. Yes. And so here I am. I got this freshman writing teacher at 8 o'clock who's drawing things out of me. And here at 4 o'clock, I got this football coach who's, putting emotion into the game. So it really was a great experience for me, that experience of college football at Ithaca College. And those two things. And again, it was a writing teacher who didn't say, hey, you're John Steinbeck or Ernest Hemingway. She said, you've got the ability to tell a story and put feeling into the story. And if somebody else can read it and get that same feeling, then that's what writing is. And so I always kept that as a hobby, as a reader. And so that Mary Ann Rochelle drew that out.
Is she still alive?
She passed away this summer before my book came out. And
wow. Did she know you were writing?
No, I had contacted her a couple of times about another book, which I just finished. And we had talked about that years and years ago. But really, no. And, it's one of those things I really regret. It's a big regret of mine.
I mean, Coach, she's seen something in you. And one thing, like we talk about other podcasts earlier, and like coaches and teachers, the people that really touch your heart, the people that really change your life are the people that see something in you that you don't even see in yourself. And we want to change lives. We want to help others. We want to build champions. That's what we want to do in this podcast. We're documenting history. So like you had an English teacher that helped change your life. You had a coach that would cry. And why would he cry? Is it because he was talking from his heart? He was talking from his being? He was talking from his spirit? Like, what was it, Coach?
He was a tough guy when he was younger. And I went back years later and coached with him, and he had mellowed a little bit. I don't know. He loved his players.
Passion.
His passion. It was, he did family. I remember the first football speech I was ever in with Jim Butterfield. I was a freshman. He brought a couple freshmen back for preseason, and he said, "We don't need you or you or you or you." And then he took his finger and he pointed it at himself, and he said, "You don't need me." And
Wow,
I
that's
and
selflessness.
I know, and
That's
I said,
leadership.
I didn't believe him. I said, "What is he talking about? We don't need him. He's the head coach. No one dares say a word." But he was right. He was trying to prove a point. You had family, and you had. And by the way, when we were national semifinals in 1979, his brother was vice president of the Yankees, and his brother got killed in a car accident the night before our game. And I really remember, I'm sorry, quarterfinals of 79. We went on to win the national championship. His brother was Jack Butterfield, vice president of the New York Yankees. And he got killed, and we're getting on the plane to go to Dubuque, Iowa, and he called the team together, and he said, you know, my brother was just killed a couple hours ago in an automobile accident. And he went to the game, and he was so classy, and he really was out of it. And I remembered that speech from his freshman year when he said, "You don't need me," because he was kind of numb on the sidelines. But the team, we won, and we went on to win a national championship. And I
Wow.
remembered what he said in the very first speech: "You don't need me." And he was that kind of guy. So,
Wow, that coach, that's powerful. Elizabeth is another middle school student. She follows every podcast, coach. She said, "How's my day been?" So I mean, it's crazy, coach, how middle school kids, it's not the high school kids, it's not the elementary, it's the middle school that they love live streamers. They love, I mean, I guess they're seeking that connection. And when they meet someone who is genuine, they meet someone who is authentic, they meet someone who really cares, like they're special. And those
well,
people that you're talking about, they were special.
yeah. And in the middle school, I have a middle schooler in the next room. We're going to go to watch a Coast Guard Academy women's
Okay,
basketball game late tonight. So,
coach, she's a high school kid. I'm sorry.
okay,
What
high
grade are you in,
schooler. All
Elizabeth?
right.
I'm sorry.
All
I'm
right.
sorry. She's in 10th grade, coach.
Okay.
She's in 10th grade.
Congratulations. Good luck, Elizabeth.
Yeah. It's so like these kids that watch, like we're teaching them life lessons. And like your coach said, "You don't need me," but he's really being humble. He's really putting himself like he's the low man on the totem pole, because like that's servant leadership. Like talk about that, coach, because
You
you're
know,
the real deal, man.
I
You're the
don't
real
know.
deal.
I don't know if he was putting him. He just wanted everything to be about
The
family.
team. Yeah, the family.
You
The
know,
team.
and I don't want to get into family. And I got to tell you something. When I went to Coast Guard many, many years later, everything that he did at Ithaca, the family stuff, I saw that at Coast Guard. By the way, he walked around Ithaca College calling everybody sir. So when I got to an academy, I called everybody sir, and that fit in. And
Yes.
then, I realized that Coast Guard as well, it was family. So I think I got a lot of that family stuff from him. Everything is about family. And we see it in our own families. But for him, the organization, the people came first. People came first.
I'm thinking about Woody. I'm thinking about Woody Hayes.
Yeah. I was out there 2 years as a graduate assistant. I did meet Woody Hayes a couple of times before he, fell to his
Wow.
when he was retired. But somebody said something to me about Woody Hayes, and I'm not an expert on anything, but they said for every Friday home game, Woody Hayes would go to the burn units and the children's hospitals over on Ohio State campus, and he said they never showed that side of him.
No.
They never showed that side of him. They always showed the side of the loud, tough coach. But here was the guy who every Friday when the team was home, again, I heard this from former players that were there
Yes.
that became coaches, and I'd heard that story. And you never hear that about Woody Hayes, that he went and it was do. You always only see the tough outside part of him.
It's amazing how many people I've had on the podcast and how many people have a story about Woody Hayes. How Woody Hayes spent time with them, or how Woody Hayes signed an autograph after a loss, or how he wrote up a play on a napkin. I mean, this is numerous people that I've heard this from. And it makes me think what you said about Woody or Coach Hayes was on the documentary they did about him. They asked him, well, like, what are you able to recruit these inner city kids? And he said, well, we have found that in a good home, it doesn't matter whether they live in a nice neighborhood or a bad neighborhood. Because I tell my players, some of the best people live in the worst neighborhoods, and some of the worst people live in the best. And this is another kid, Coach. B-Dog Rules. He's another middle schooler. He's watching all the podcasts. So they're really getting a great education about life and about people. And you win with people. That's Coach Hayes' book. I mean, he knew how powerful that was, that you win with people. So, like, talk about that, Coach. Like, that's part of your philosophy: family, people, love. Love.
Yeah, you know, one of the great things, and I've talked about this before at Coast Guard, you know, when you become a head coach and you start off, all you think about is winning, this, that. What's this player going to do? What position should he be in? All the crazy football stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, as myself and the coaches that were there with me, if you started to put things first and say, okay, what's best for you, young man, as you coach for us? What's best for you? You want to graduate from this academy. We're going to put your needs first. We're going to make you number one. You want to graduate.
Love.
Yep. And that helped us. That bit into football. You talk about longevity at an academy. The Admirals bit into that. We're going to use the fantastic sport of football to make you a better officer, to make the country safer, to make the Department of Homeland Security do its job better. So we're going to use all these leadership things, and we're going to do it with family. You know, we're all brothers, we're all sisters, we're all going to do it. We're all from this human race. So if you're on our football team, you know, we're going to do it all together, and we're going to join together family. And at Coast Guard, that came easy. It came very easy. It was natural for people there. They already had, you know, the military is very ingrained to themselves. They take care of themselves. I don't know if we see enough of that, you know.
They take care of themselves. Yeah,
you know.
You're right. This is Coach Ball. This is my friend from St. Petersburg. He wants to know, what position did you play, Coach?
I was a center.
The greatest position.
My whole life, I wanted to be a running back, but my high school coach, Paul Burkackley, up in Glens Falls, said to me, you know, you're getting faster, but that's making you a better center. You're not going to be a fullback. So.
I mean, everything you've told me, I believe most times in life, decisions are made for you. Like, you didn't get the decision on what position you played. You know, it just happened. You know, I mean, it's like you do what's right in life and you do your best. What is it Lou Holt said? Do what's right, do your best, treat people how you want to be treated. And B-Dog Rules is a center. Welcome to the fraternity, B-Dog Rules. Yeah, these kids, I mean, love. I mean, that's something that a great family, a good family has. And love, I always talk about this. There's only one word for love in the English language, but in the Greek language, I think there's 3 or 4, right? So like, there's different types of love. And Mike Spencer, who was the head coach at Aquinas in Florida, he was my friend. I coached him at Virginia Union. He said, Troy, how do you show somebody you love them? And I was like, I don't know. Time and attention. Time and attention. Don't you still coach? Yes, I still coach. I'm an assistant at Dinwiddie High School. So, Coach, I mean, how do you show somebody you love them? Time and attention. Can you add to that, Coach?
You know, I there's a section, I don't want to get too much, there's a section in my book where I talk about one young man who really, he was a second stringer on the line, and he played hard, and he was a tough kid. But we had a conversation once, and from the conversation, I took this point away, that at the Coast Guard Academy, they were teaching people that your life is not about you. It is about others, okay? That it's not about what you achieve. It's about what you have done to help others, your existence. And I believe that was the basis of the academy. And I don't want to get into the whole story about because that takes away it's a whole chapter in the book. But this young man, you know, taught me. Here's a guy I passed up as a starter twice, and he taught me that the academy doesn't teach you that your life is about yourself. Your life is about others. Your life is about what you do for others. It's the old adage of faith and charity. Anybody can have great faith. Anybody can be perfect. It's what did you do to help the world? And I felt that the academy, that's what they train these young people to do. And that's what love is for me. How much have you helped the people on the other side of the planet or the people down the street?
Like
You
Mother
know,
Teresa.
and by the way, in my book, I've made myself a little bit, as one of the Coast Guard attorneys who read my book early on said, you've made yourself an anti-hero in your own memoir. You've painted yourself as a selfish football coach. And in many ways, I was. My wife is helping take care of my father. I'm concerned about a game, not about a man dying. I'm concerned about this, and he's reliving.
Sounds like me.
And so I did say, am I too wrapped up in this world of football? Is winning too important? And so in many ways, I did do that. But again, that story. So I think that's the best way I can explain it. It's funny. I don't say goodbye to my players anymore. I don't end conversations. They're out and they're officers. I might talk to somebody once every 3 years, and I end all our conversations with "I love you" now. So I mean,
amen.
Yeah, it can be meaningless if it's not to somebody but if it's to people, I've said it to coaches who've called me about the book and said, "Geez, I read your book. I haven't seen you in 40 years." We end up, instead of saying goodbye, say "I love you" to end the conversation.
Yeah, Coach, I love you.
I love you too, buddy.
I felt like I've known you my whole life because it's like we're brothers from another mother, because we have that bond, Coach, because we love it.
All human beings, you get wrapped up in your world of football, but all human beings basically care about other people. You know what I mean? I look at Mike Toop and I. Mike Toop and I were rival coaches, Merchant Marine, Coast Guard. And in the end, we became very, very close in a sense. And early on, when we first started our rivalry, we disliked each other. And then it grew to a tolerance. And then it grew to friendship. And then it grew to a great deal of respect and love for each other. And here we were fighting for our biggest game. So, you have to step away and look at the inside of you and the inside of other people sometimes.
Yeah, no doubt, Coach. So the book, Home Fields, take me into the beginning of the book, Coach, and take me through the book. I know we don't want to ruin the book, but I want to do this due diligence. Coach, we're at almost 23 minutes right now. We ain't even got to the book. We're going to kill it, Coach.
Home Fields, Coast Guard Academy football coach recounts the unfulfilled lives of World War II. So it starts off in August. As we get ready for a game. At that time, the Merchant Marine game was the second game of the season. I believe it was the second week of September. My father, we've taken him out of the house for us. I mean, he's dying. He's 87, and he is in hospice care on our couch. My wife and I adopted, as I said, very late in life. And our daughter is now 4. She thinks of my dying father as her brother, but she doesn't really understand. And so I have this obsession to try to win this rivalry game. We haven't won it in 4 years. And at night, each night, his mind becomes clear. When you go on hospice, they take you a lot of meds away from you. They take, so your mind becomes, and so we talk about each night, children he grew up with in this small, tiny town of Myers, New York, on Cayuga Lake, an immigrant village. There's a salt plant there. They came there. They all worked in the salt plant. They all had small houses with outdoor toilets.
Where did they migrate from? What country?
Syria. All the
wow. So that's the reason Syria. You look the way you do, is because you are of Syrian descent. You're Middle Eastern.
Yeah. So they all came from there. And he talks about these lives growing up. They had dreams. One of the young men dreamed of being a doctor because his girlfriend had leukemia in the 1940s. As he goes off to war, you can't make that up. These are true people. I went to Gus Isaacs, who's still alive. He's 100 years old, and we went through all these stories. And so he goes through how they grow up as simple people, how they're
but Coach, when you say simple people,
one was two best friends. Two best friends are together. One is handsome and the great athlete, and he dreams of being a doctor. His girlfriend has leukemia. The other one is shy and quiet, but a deep thinker. And he's in love with his best friend's sister, and he can't think. So I try to draw their relationships out, their personalities as they grow up from probably the age of 12 on. And then suddenly, as they're growing up and they have dreams, and many people in this village went off to war and did not come back, and some did come back. And as I said, one of people is still 100. My daughter and I and wife were at his birthday party this summer. So I do that, the relationships of these people growing up. So we talk about that each night. And then the next day I go back off to football and the challenges of, waking up with my dad. And, when you're a caregiver and somebody's in hospice, you're doing a lot of things. I mean, you're changing diapers and taking care of somebody's body. And my dad's mind was pretty clear, though. His body was wearing down, but his mind was good. And of course, we had a 4-year-old daughter. My dad moved in with us when my daughter was 6 months old. So she knew no other life but him. And my dad would come to the academy and do all these things with us. And then suddenly his health went downhill. And my wife said, we can't move him out just because he got ill. He's going to have to stay here till. So I hope I haven't made it that complicated, but it's about caregiving, World War II. And a lot of the story is about the guys, the guys and girls he grew up with and how they were affected by World War II.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the people that he grew up with, because like my ancestors, they immigrated from Czechoslovakia and Poland, so they all came to this country for a better life. But Coach Tatum, he's one of the best offensive line coaches in North Carolina. He has a great podcast. Coach Tatum, we love you. You need to get Coach on your podcast. All right, because he's wrote this book, and I love it because you said simple people. And the simplest people are like me. They're the happiest people because they know what's important. And I just want to say, like, the smartest people in the world, like these guys that are astrophysicists, they're so smart that they don't even believe that there's a creator. So you're so smart that you're stupid. Well, but the simplest people are actually smart because they know what's real.
That's a misnomer, because I got to tell you, when people came to this country, my grandparents will say 200 years ago, all these people who lived on this little village, and they came here in 1920. When you come to a country for freedom of religion or to eat, what I mean?
Are they Orthodox? Are they Eastern Orthodox?
Eastern Orthodox? In fact, the whole book centers around a church, Eastern Orthodox,
Coach, I just went to the Bob Marley movie, and they're from Jamaica, but they came from Ethiopia.
Yeah,
the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Yeah. It's all connected, Coach. Yeah.
And by the way, when you're taking care of a dying guy, he talks about heaven or what happens next.
Yes.
I can come home from football practice at the Merchant Marine Academy, but there's a guy on the couch there at 9:00 at night. And when he rolls over, and I slept right on one couch. He had a hospital bed right in our living room. My wife and daughter were upstairs. In the middle of the night, they ask you about heaven and the next life. But what I was getting back to was, when people come to this country 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and they don't have any education and they don't speak English, they're thinking about, how do I feed my children? What is my freedom? Who says they didn't have the same brain as a physicist or
They do.
They just didn't have the chance to do that. I mean, my brother's an orthopedic surgeon, graduated from an Ivy League medical school and does nothing but spinal surgery. I can remember when my father went back to the village, some of the older relatives or village, Myers, some of the old relatives said, your son can't go to Ivy League school. Your son can't become a doctor. But why not? You could have, some of the people here. So really the limits are, or maybe the advantages are what we have in this country. You can become a lot, but if you come here just to survive, well, then you're going to just feed your children. That's what they did.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes kind of along with what I teach my class, that I grew up thinking I wasn't as smart as other people. My dad dropped out of school in 10th grade, went to the Marine Corps. My mom was a bank teller, but I didn't realize that I was just as smart as the people on the TV screen. And Coach, really your book, right. I've never read it, but it's about what's important in life. And
the whole book's about the meaning of life. It's about life and death. I question it. It's got religious stuff in there.
Coach, you've been on other podcasts. Did they get it?
Well, I think you get as much as you can. I mean, if you go on the radio,
did they get what the book was about, or was it just about coaching? It's about life. It's what's important in life.
This book is about the meaning of life. What's your meaning? Did my father, as he's questioning, did I live a good life? What am I going to do in heaven?
Coach, we're 30 minutes in. We're 30 minutes in, Coach, and I got it. Are you impressed?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's there's without a doubt, and that's why the subtitle is "Unfulfilled Lives" because people had
Unfulfilled
dreams.
lives.
People had dreams, and we see it every day. We see it in the news. We see it around the world. We see people that are young and die. In this case, he was talking about these people he loved, he grew up with, he idolized, and then all of a sudden, they're come here from these simple people who worked, and now all of a sudden they're on the front lines. Now all of a sudden they have to be 18 years old, and they have to worry about, what it's like to be in the middle of World War II. And that's kind of what it was. I named it The Unfulfilled Lives because people had dreams. They just didn't go off the way. They just weren't empty people. They had lives. They had dreams. They had people that loved them. They had parents, and they had things they wanted to become. One of the guys was a deep thinker. He wanted to, he didn't understand why his thoughts were so deep. His best friend admired him. His best friend wanted to be a doctor. Other people,
Did the deep thinker come back?
yeah, I'm not going to discuss anything about that stuff. There's people in the, that gives away the whole book.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
so I have many characters in the book who go off to World War II, but, it basically centers around 4 people in the village, 2 guys and 2 girls, and, how their lives were affected, but it does have so many other characters. So some of the main characters came back. So I'm not going to discuss it.
Yeah,
But
I understand.
it's not growing up. I mean, for all these middle schoolers, the book starts off when they're 12. My father was 7 when the book starts off, but the middle schoolers are 12, and that's when you start wondering about the meaning of life.
So they graduate high school or whatever, go to whatever grade they went to then, 10th grade or whatever, and then they went to World War II, and they're the greatest generation.
Yeah,
they won World War II, and ever since then we've been a superpower.
Yeah, there's a scene, and I'll let you. There's these 2 of the guys are talking. They're watching someone ice skate below in a frozen creek, and it's December of, I want to say 42. So they know they're going to war. They're 18. They're going to be 18. They know they're both going to war. And one says to the other as they're just standing there watching this ice skater in a frozen creek, he says, time is moving like this frozen creek below us. And the other one says, oh, what do you mean it's moving? Because they both know they're going to war. What do you mean it's moving like the frozen creek? He said, we see the ice and we don't think that time is moving, but the water underneath the ice is moving, and it's gone like time forever. And so that's what people thought of then. They just staring at this solitary ice skater, wondering about time. And we don't know it's moving because we just think of time as the frozen ice we see, but the water underneath it is moving and time is gone forever. So that's there's a lot of that deep stuff in the book from one of the characters. So
today I was talking to one of my students. There was a guy who was a Vietnam vet that was driving one of the buses. And I told him, I said, dude, during the Vietnam War, like if your birthday got called, you got drafted and you had to go there and you had to last a year. And if you lasted a year, you came back. And if you didn't, you didn't. And I don't know what it was in World War II, but Coach, those guys, more than me because you were the head coach at Coast Guard Academy. But I
also talk about in the book players that served for me, one particularly, and one's brother who had, tragedies in service for the Coast Guard. So I don't just, as I go back and talk, when I come into the, go back and forth in the book, and I go back and forth quite a bit, but I've pulled it off, and when I talk a lot about the Coast Guard, it isn't just about football. It's also about guys I've had that served and had, tragedy and fate turn right to them,
Yeah, my dad was a Marine. I'm big into the military. I'm big into the special forces, Jocko Willink and, David Goggins and Chris Kyle, and why they do it. And, Coach, they're elite. They do it for the guy next to them. So talk a little bit about that. How do you coach that? Or is that just in a person that they're willing, it's not about the flag. It's not about the government. It's about the guy next to me. And if I don't do my job, then that dude's not coming home to his family. And that's sacrifice. Well, and they know what they signed up for.
Yeah. And again, I was a civilian, so I don't want to step on their toes for the unbelievable,
Yes,
heroic
sir.
things they do in life. So, but to me, the military I learned I spent 3 years as an employee of the Department of the Army at West Point Prep, the prep school for West Point, and then 21 years in the Coast Guard. So as an instructor at both places, a teacher and coach, they have a great deal of love. It goes back to what I said, a great deal of love for each other, a great deal of love for their organization, a great deal of dedication. All of them that I learned at the Coast Guard Academy, from admirals on down to enlisted, think of each other as family. And it goes back to that term family. And they never put themselves ahead of each other. On my team, I would see that. I would see a close bond. I'd see a close bond within the classes. So if you're the class of 2024, we'll say, there's a very tight bond with them there. So that's part of it. Now, one thing I used to say to kids that I was recruiting when they'd come to visit is, I can't put that inside. You have to have a little something. I don't mean you have to be gung-ho, but you have to have a little interest. You have to know you're a little bit different than even your best friend, but you have to know you're in an organization where other people are more important than you, not because they're more important, but because you make them more important. You love them more. Just going back to what I said, your life is about others, not necessarily about you.
Service.
Yeah,
I mean, it's about service, and you're in the service. So like, it's better to give than to receive. And like, I've learned so much about you in your program, but when I learn about myself. Like, life is lived from the inside out, and like all the experiences that you've gone through and your dad has gone through, it has made me self-reflect on my life and on what's important to me. And just in the 37 minutes that we've talked, and like,
well,
go ahead, coach.
I,
Go
I,
ahead, coach.
I would say that for me to be at an academy for that long, you have, and anybody, not just me, there's other coaches there in other sports that are there that long. You have to be more about people. Again, circling back, we're here on a football podcast, and you can't say, early on, you can say, I'm going to be the football coach. That's what's important to me, football, winning games. If
That's me.
you make that number one, which I did as all young coaches. I'm going to be a head coach of the Coast Guard Academy. We're going to win a national championship. Then I'm going to become the head coach at Notre Dame. But if you make that a priority, then you're not going to last around these kind of people. You have to make people a priority. Now, I understand we're all in this to win, and football is winning, and we're trying to get more light bulbs on the scoreboard. But if you don't make people a priority every place when you're coaching, then you're going to be in trouble. And at a place like a military academy, where people are being trained to protect the nation, you're in trouble if you don't do it. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. And like, I had a coach. Yeah, go ahead and do whatever you got to do, coach. If you got something to do, but yeah, go ahead, coach. You're fine.
Oh,
yeah,
like, sorry about that. Screwed our whole podcast up.
No, coach. Coach, this is genuine. This is press record. There's no editing, coach. This is just Chan Gailey told me, Troy, the Lord takes care of children and fools. And he said, I'm not a child. Neither am I. I'm a fool. So I am blessed, coach. I didn't even know I was going to have you on here.
Yeah.
I mean, yesterday, I've never even met you, coach. I knew nothing about you. And that just shows you, like, I'm blessed. And what's important, it ain't me. But yeah, coach. Yeah.
It isn't us. Like people say to me, I want people to be touched by this book. I'm not concerned about, you know what I mean? I know I'm not, I want people to be touched. I want people to read a book and not say, oh, it's a great college football. I want people to read a book and say that changed my life. It helped me better. So.
Ooh.
And again, by the way, there's a football coach in this book, me, who's searching for the meaning of life as well. You know what I mean? So I'm doing the searching as well. I'm not, we all end up
Yeah.
searching for that
I
always.
mean, I mean, in the movie today about Bob Marley, he's a young kid and he's talking to the Rastaman, who is like, the wise dude. And he asks him, he says, in order to get the message, you must search. So like, I was like, wow, like you'll never find the meaning of life unless you try to figure it out.
Yeah.
And
You know,
I mean, would it ruin the book? I mean, because I have coaches.
One person, there's a relationship there with a 4-year-old and an 87-year-old dying man. My daughter, I'm 56 now. My daughter's 4, and my dad's 87 and he's dying. Okay. And I'm circling about, this football, and he's talking about heaven,
Yeah.
will I get to ice skate in heaven? Will I get to ice skate up there? Are my ice skates up there already? I mean, those are questions that people dying can ask you in the middle of the
Yeah.
night. Will I get to ice skate in heaven? Well, I don't. Are my, what do you say when somebody says, are my ice skates in heaven already? When I get there, will my ice skates be there? In the middle of the night, do you say, listen, I got to get some sleep, I got a big game, or let me figure out if they're in heaven or not? I mean, that becomes your dilemma when you're taking care of somebody.
Yeah, I had a coach last year tell me, he said, Troy, I took this job and like the kids that I'm coaching tell me that I'm trying to change them, that I'm not like them. Like he couldn't relate to the kids. But the great coaches and the great teachers, how do they relate? Is it that they can see themselves in the players? And like they can see them helping them, and in turn they're helping their self. Like, what would you say to a coach that says that the players say you're trying to change me, or you don't understand me, or you don't look like me? It really don't matter, because some of the greatest coaches didn't look like their players. So like, how is that connection made? What would you say to that coach?
What I would say to him is to me, I learned this as what are the goals of these young people? What are the goals? At the Coast Guard Academy, the goal was to become an officer. I know that is an easier type of young person to work with. They're already set there. But if you say to a young person, listen, and I've talked about this before, if you need extra time to miss practice to go to academics, then that shows that I'm thinking of you more than I am football.
Ooh.
Okay, so we had that rule for our freshmen. If you came to me in person, you had to see me in person. You couldn't send me a text or an email. You had to see me in person. And you say, I've got to go to chemistry, then fine, I'll let you go. All right. So, and I think that would go for anything. What are the goals if you're at a high school and it's a bunch of young people who don't know what they're going to do for their life? Let's see if we can get you to graduate. And then what do we want to do in life? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to maybe learn a trade? So I think you have to put the people first. And what are your goals? And then the football works around it.
Yes.
And, you're not, I don't know about changing people, but I know that you got to find out what people are seeking. What are you seeking?
It's crazy that you say that, because it makes me think of Lou Holtz, who coached under Coach Hayes. And I mean, when you win with people, Lou Holtz said that you find out what people want, and then you help people get what they want, and you will in turn get whatever you want. Have you ever heard Lou say this, Coach Holtz?
I have heard him. He's one of my favorites, but I got to tell you, not to change this. My favorite Lou Holtz of all time is, don't ever let a team beat you twice. So if you lose a heartbreaker, and that is a classic at the Coast Guard Academy, because you are undermanned.
It happens.
So you can play a team that's maybe 25-point favorites against you guys. Maybe they're ranked in the top 20, and you lose on the last second of the game. And here you are at the Coast Guard Academy. You've battled, you almost pulled off a big upset, and then you lost at the last second. By Tuesday, you got to put it behind you. And you got to put things, otherwise that team's going to beat us against that. And that scenario plays out more at a place like Coast Guard, or maybe the other academies where they don't have all the big Division I scholarship players. At Coast Guard, we had disadvantages against some of the other teams. They had big rosters, and they were, our academic standards were so high, and we had such a small male enrollment. We only had 950 people at 40% female, so we didn't have a big roster. So that Lou Holtz one I always stuck to, so we had to put
great.
The other thing I learned about that single expression that Lou Holtz used was I learned to always find something positive in defeat, to always do. You had to made like the old Coast Guard expression, find a safe port in any storm. Well, we had to find something positive, in all the stuff we did. Those are my Lou Holtz ones, so.
Yeah, small victories, because
yeah.
You
remember, we're trying to teach something beyond the game itself. We're trying to make people understand that disaster can happen when you're a Coast Guard officer and you still have to get up next morning and go to work. And you got to, just because you saved one life in the Coast Guard today doesn't mean you're done saving them tomorrow. So we tried to ingrain that everything keeps going.
Yeah. Like, the people are always sending messages to like Jim McNally saying, like, can you help me get to the NFL? Or people ask me, Troy, can you ask Coach Maribal of Miami to hire me? Or, people are always like, how do I move up in the profession? Like, Coach, what do you say to those people? Like, do they just need to learn? Like, life is the greatest teacher. Like, what advice do you give those people?
When you're younger, everything is about your ego. And winning.
Brock Purdy said exactly what you said.
Yeah. And life has a way of taking the sharp edges off your ego. Sometimes it has a harsh way of taking those sharp edges off your ego. But life has a way of making you not look so much to yourself, not care so much about your own victories, but the victories of those around you. That the people on your team it's important for. I guess I'm hoping answering that the right way.
Yeah, it's not about you. It's not about you. Make God laugh. Show him your plans.
When you're young, you want to become the greatest coach of all time. You want to when you're as time goes on and you realize you're around such phenomenal people anywhere. Yeah, I say Coast Guard Academy, but any college you're at, you just. There's an expression right there.
Coach Bald, Teddy Roosevelt, that was a good one. I think he was a general or something. He led the United States Army. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Talk about that, Coach. Like, how do you, I guess you show people you care by, taking a genuine interest in them and what they want to achieve. Because it isn't about what you want to achieve as a coach. It's about helping others.
If it's 4th and 1 and you got to have a big block out of one of your top players, you know what I mean? And it's a big crunch time. You should know that his dream is to become a helicopter pilot. If that's his biggest dream, if you have guys who are playing and they're going up and down the field, you've got to know what their dreams are. I don't mean the dreams on that particular play, but you got to know about them. You got to share their life with them. You got to know, okay, I just want to be a commander on a boat. So you got to talk with them far away from the football field. You got to talk with them, far away. And I got to tell you, my coaches, the assistant coaches I had were phenomenal about casual relationships. I don't mean just talking about what your career is or what your goals are off the field, but also on the field. So it wasn't, you know what I mean? So and if you that gives you the ability to see when people are struggling as well. You know what I mean? So, so I tried to bring each kid in as I got older and talk, going into the springtime. Tell me something. What are your goals? What's going on? I could, at the academy, you got all their grades, you got everything, you know everything about them. If they're in trouble, you get a military report and all that stuff. But I wanted to know what they wanted to do.
Coach, just thinking about what you said, talking to people, and you saying that you're 65 and you have a 15-year-old daughter,
14,
that a 13, like there's a generation gap there. And like kids her age, they don't talk, they text, they watch the podcast. But your daughter probably is more advanced because, I mean, we didn't grow up with computers, Coach. You know, we didn't grow up with cell phones.
No.
So what can these kids do? What do you teach your daughter? Because if you can talk and you can communicate, like that makes you special, because kids can't talk. They can't communicate.
No, I want to say, you know, this year, and she isn't one of these kids who played. She did play some youth sports and it went up and down, but she's fallen in love with the game of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's brought a bond to us. And I'm not a basketball coach, but I can help her with her shot and go sit in the stands at the games. And now we can, you know, I can call her down and say, hey, listen, South Carolina's #1 and they're playing UConn, who's 45 minutes away from us. And we sit together and watch women's basketball.
Yes.
Tonight, you know, later on tonight, we're going to see Coast Guard play. It's great. You know, she gets to walk in with the old retired coach. Well, no one knows me. No one knows me there. So I could be any parent. No one knows me anymore. I've been gone 4 years. So we're going to sit in the stands. And so that has helped us share. I know that that's new because we didn't have that the years before. She didn't play basketball. She's just kind of starting and practicing, and she has some goals. And that's something. Another thing that, you know, we make movie time. Like I told you, last night we watched Hoosiers. Tomorrow night we're going to watch, you know, Rudy. You know, we're making movie time. You know, you try to find those movies where, okay, they're not too age appropriate, but they're still funny and we can laugh at them. You know, again, we talk about our background. We were on the floor laughing, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. You know what I mean?
So, it's a great movie.
Yeah, and so she thought that was hilarious. Now we've had to watch all 3 sections of it, you know, get part 2. So that's another way we've connected. And so, you know, I'm like every other parent in the world. Every night you say, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? And, you know, Vice Admiral Sandra Stowe, who was named one of the top 100 women in Newsweek, she's the one who helped me get the publishing deal. She read the book and said, I love this book. But we have had long talks about, you know, her challenge. Here she is, an admiral in the Coast Guard, and she says how challenging it is to be a young person back when she was growing up with a wonderful family, and how challenging it is now she sees with her relatives. So it's a challenging time with all these internets and phones to be a young person right now. It's a very challenging time. And so I'm like every parent. I worry about everything and that stuff.
Yeah. You talking to me about these movies teach lessons. Like Stan Lee, who created the Marvel Universe, I didn't know he didn't own it. Like he created it, but he didn't own it. And he created American mythology to teach lessons to young people, like that they could learn from. And he created these heroes, but like these movies and these stories, that develops a person's emotional intelligence. So you understand more than just dates and basketball, but like you learn your emotions and why you feel the way that you feel and why others, and you can learn empathy and perspective. You know, so I mean, how do you feel about that, Coach? Are you familiar with emotional intelligence? I'm pretty sure you are. I mean,
yeah,
like learning, lifelong learner. I mean,
yeah.
You're a lifelong learner.
I've said, I hope I'm on the right track, but it's physical, mental, and emotional. And then my wife would always say, you know, you have a soul in there. There's a soul around you.
Yes.
And that's a part of it too. And
yes,
so it's all becomes a, you know, a tough learning experience. You grow. Somebody asked me the other day, I don't want to get into this, but somebody asked me the other day, you know, we got in a discussion and I said, you know, you can say all the things you want. The human brain will tell you, okay, this is what is logical. Okay. There were dinosaurs 10,000 years ago. I don't want to get into evolution.
Yeah, reason.
Okay, reason. But the human heart also tells you something. And, you know, the desire to, you know, to your heart will tell you, it can trump what your brain is thinking sometimes. It can, you know, your brain can tell you one thing and say, okay, well, this is what is really the smartest decision I should make. But inside of you, your heart says, well, I think there's another decision it's maybe not as smart, but it's more full of love and more full of joy. you know.
Yeah, that's my sports. Just sub to YouTube channel. Great work over here. Dude, I'm the low man on the totem pole. I'm blessed. Coach is blessed. And I mean, just talking to you today, Coach, I've learned so much, not just about you and your story and your book, but it's made me think about myself and what's important in life. And like, football is just a game. It's a game that we use to teach about life. I know in your other podcast, they talked about this, and, you know, your book is something that will last forever. And I mean, now this podcast we have, so like, Coach, we're at 55 minutes and we ain't scratched the surface. I mean, we could sit here and talk all day, but like, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to talk about that you think is important, that you think like this country needs to know? Because like, where are the Teddy Roosevelts today? Where are the John F. Kennedys? Where are, you know, the Eisenhowers? Like, why don't we have them people leading our country? I mean,
The only
maybe they
thing
are.
I don't want to get.
You don't have to get political, Coach, because I ain't political.
I will
Politics
say
is
this,
professional wrestling.
I wrote a book about World War II.
Yes,
I
sir.
did a lot of research on it. People,
Yes,
what units were they were in, what things, how things. I did research. I got it as much as I could. This book takes place in a 6-week period, but I wrote it over 10 years. And you can't write when you're coaching. So, and the thing that I find is there are a lot of similarities, and I'm not a historian, so all the historians can. There are a lot of similarities in the world right now that reflect on what was happening in World War II.
Yes.
With countries taking over parts of countries and things like that. So I write.
Yeah, Coach, you got to learn from your past.
Yeah, and
you got to learn from your past.
I worry about that. You know, I worry about that.
I'll say it, Coach. Tucker Carlson, when he interviewed Vladimir Putin, I listened to the first sentence he said. And in the first sentence, he talked about the Nazis, the neo-Nazis. He talked about the Jews. He talked about America, and he talked about Russia. Coach, I don't know about you, but that sounds a lot like World War II. And has times really changed? Like you said, what's important in life and what's important to us as coaches and people in this country? Is it what's important to the people running this country? Like, dude, our military, you know them, Coach. I don't know anybody, but you know some of the people that are running this thing. I mean, they're the reason we're safe.
Yeah.
How do you feel? How do you feel with those people running this country and like where this country is headed? Because
I can only say we live in the greatest country in the world. Okay?
Yes.
We have a lot of freedoms. I have the freedom to write a book, you know, about, and I do bring some religious things up in it. I have that freedom. I have that freedom to do what I want. And I think that if you look around the globe right now, many of those freedoms are in danger for other people.
We lead the way.
Yeah,
we lead the way. America leads the way.
Yeah. So I again, I think when as there's expansion prior to World War II, there's expansion you see now. So I think that, you have to worry about those parallels. You have to worry about a world war, because in World War II, 60 million people died. Okay. 60 million people would die now in 6 seconds if another world war broke out. So I just kind of pray for our leaders to make sure we have world peace. I guess that's the best way I can put it.
Yes. Yeah. MK, no, he did not get switched out. All right. MK has learned about John. There's a guy on TikTok who claims to be the real John F. Kennedy Jr. And he's a conspiracy theorist. And like, they claim all these rich people get switched out. And like, no, he has not been switched out. All right. He's a football coach. We're not important enough to get switched out. All right.
Not sure what you mean by that, but
yeah, like their identity stolen. Like, I don't know, coach. It's wild. Yeah, coach. I guess it's a conspiracy. Like, they say there's multiple Bidens and there's
Yeah.
multiple Trumps.
Oh,
Like,
I get you.
who knows? Yeah, coach. Who knows what to believe? Like,
No.
I mean, it's kind of reminds me of George Orwell, 1984. In the future, they said what is false is true and what is true is false. But coach, what is real today was real when your dad was a kid, and it will be real when your daughter is our age.
Yeah.
Like, the golden rule is still the golden rule. And Martin Luther King, coach, in order to be great, you must be grateful. Everybody wants to be famous, but not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great because greatness is determined by service.
Yeah, that's 100% true. You can't say anything against them. That's true. I lived my life quarter century working for these military units where their whole life was about service, to serve others, to help others, to save lives. And that's, I think sometimes all branches of the military, and I learned it a long time ago at the Department of the Army, that they represent love more than they do, anything else. They want to take care of people. They want to make the world safe. And, that's the best way that I would say all these people who are in branches of the service are.
Yeah, I mean, MK learned about Gandhi. I mean, all he did was fight against apartheid in South Africa and then go to India and try to fight against the caste system. Like, that's service. I mean, that's love. And then what did they do? They shot him.
I tried to do that with this book. I tried to write a book where we showed people that life is short, life is precious.
Yes.
It was precious for people I coached at the Coast Guard for. There was people who lost their lives young at the Coast Guard. There's people who lost their lives in World War II young. And I tried to show that life is short and precious, and not everyone gets a chance to fulfill their dreams. My dad was lucky enough to share his final years with a 4-year-old, my daughter. And then but as he did that, he reflected on those who served in World War II. And I reflect, as the Coast Guard people. So life is short. That's about how this book comes out, So.
Life is short and life is precious. And maybe that's what we're missing, is that we've forgotten that, or somebody has forgotten that, that life is precious. And
it is.
Like, coach, if they want to go buy the book, where can they go, coach? And then me and you will stay on here for a little bit and chat.
It's easy that whatever. I hate to say you can buy it anywhere, but if you go to Barnes and Noble, Amazon is the easiest way to say it. Just go to Amazon. You can get the book at Amazon. I hope it's a book that touches you. I know it has. And so you can go to Amazon. That's the simplest. But you can go to Barnes and Noble, or if you go into any bookstore, because it's not self-published. It was published by Kohler Books. If you go into any bookstore, they'll tell you that they can get it for you in a day. I'm not Stephen King, so it's not going to hit you in the face as you walk in the front door. But you can buy it. Most people buy it on Amazon. That's the way it goes now. But you could buy it. I just did a book signing at an independent bookstore in our area. Bank Square Books over in Mystic. You could get it there. You can get it at any bookstore, but they'll,
The book is about, we got a whole podcast here, but the book is about a football coach whose dad is in hospice, getting ready to pass away. And he's reflecting on what's important in life. But the coach is also, as he learns about what's important in life from his dad, he's also learning about what's important to life to him and also his daughter. And it's about World War II, MK. Yep. But I mean, thank you, coach.
You said it perfectly. It is.
Oh, really?
Wow. What's that?
Man, coach, you're good, man. You made me feel good about myself.
You said it perfectly. But we're telling it a little bit about the shortened lives of World War II. You said it perfectly, but as he's reflecting, my dad is reflecting on World War II. So you said it perfectly. Yeah.
Right on, coach. I'm gonna press end here and we'll sit and chat for a second, coach.
Okay.
You're the best. Thank you.
Thanks.